Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of I Like to Read with me, your host, Rachel Polanski. Today, I am very, very excited and lucky to be joined by Danielle. Is it Lindemann? I should have actually
Lindemann, yeah.
Lindemann. Yeah, I should have checked on that before we started. Oh well. She is an associate professor of sociology at Lehigh University, as well as the author of True Story: What Reality TV Says About Us, a sociological study of reality TV that explores its rise as a culture dominating medium. And we will get into all that as to what the genre says about us as a society or doesn't say about us. So thank you, Danielle, for joining and coming on the podcast. Very excited to
Thanks for having me.
talk to you and pick apart your brain. So my first question for you is more general, but what can you talk a little bit about your decision to actually go into academia and the journey to getting your PhD, your interest, like what led you to sociology, a little bit about your background and your journey to where you are now?
Oh, wow, that's such a good question. Growing up, I always thought I was going to be a writer, like a creative writer. And I majored in creative writing as an undergraduate, but also as an undergraduate, I took a work study job for a sociology professor, who actually was kind of a big deal in the field of sociology, but I had no idea at the time. And I just really enjoyed doing that work. I was a research assistant for him, and I took a lot of sociology classes too. And so even though I graduated with a degree in English and creative writing, I realized like sociology was something that I really wanted to pursue. And so from there, I, went to grad school and became a sociology professor. But, hopefully now, since I'm able to write books, I'm able to kind of do a little bit, get the best of both worlds, where I'm able to write things that are creative in some ways, even though they're nonfiction, but also get to do sociology, which I love.
Awesome. So how does the research process for a book like this work? When did you realize that you had a book and a larger study to explore rather than just sort of like an article or a one-off little study?
So I've been teaching this class on the sociology of reality TV at Lehigh University. And I always kind of thought, I've taught it a few times. It's a pretty popular class because it's reality
It's interesting,
TV,
yeah.
as you would imagine. And, I always thought, this would be a really interesting book. In the class, we pair episodes of reality TV with classical readings in sociology. And I always thought, each of these could kind of be a chapter of a book. And then at a certain point, an agent reached out to me and said, "We're looking for someone to write a book on sociology of reality TV. Could that be you?" And I thought, and I had actually just gotten tenure the week before that.
Perfect
and I was looking
timing
for my next project. It really was fate, right? So it's a narrative of fate. So yeah, I said, yeah, that can be me. And so in a way, it kind of wrote itself because I already kind of had the structure, the shape in mind from this course that I had taught. So it was really just translating that course into book format.
Cool. And so I know you talk a lot about, the initial stigmas that we have against reality TV as a society. And so, probably a little bit daunting to write a book that faces some of those stigmas and, has such a negative cultural connotation, even though your book seeks and I think successfully disproves that. So what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions, just on sort of like a high concept, like about the genre that we can then dive into some of the more minute details, but just a sort of like a overall reality TV, what do you think are some of the biggest stigmas and misconceptions about the genre?
So I think one misconception is that you'd have to be stupid to watch it.
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of extremely intelligent people who watch reality TV, and it's not usually just to pick it apart in this kind of academic way. It's because they enjoy reality TV. A majority of people in the United States are watching reality TV, so you don't have to be stupid to watch reality TV. So I would say that's kind of one misconception. I think another, not necessarily a misconception, people often talk about the negative cultural impact of reality TV, which absolutely exists. There have been negative consequences of reality TV, but there are also positive consequences of reality TV too. Reality TV takes us places that scripted TV doesn't always take us. It's historically been more diverse than other forms of TV and other forms of media. And yes, sometimes that diversity results in representations that are stereotypical, and that's problematic, absolutely. But I think reality TV can be a really useful cultural tool, and it can do positive things, in addition to, yes, the negative consequences that arise from reality TV.
Yes, I definitely agree. I mean, I used to have this sort of oh, reality TV is dumb. I remember growing up, like watching my mom watch it. I was kind of like, why are you doing this? And then that'll actually lead to our next segue where I want to talk about the role of love in reality TV. My biggest obsession is 90 Day Fiance. And I loved that you talked about 90 Day Fiance because I think I started watching it and I was like, what is this show? It's so stupid. And then it really was this sociocultural exploration of love in different cultures, because what I found so fascinating about it was there was no like tangible prize. Like you don't get rewarded if you make it through the 90 days. Like these people are really supposedly just doing it for love. But then you add in the whole like green card element. And then you add in the whole, I really liked how you talked about the levels of attractiveness and how we sort of like, couples like Lauren and Alexi, who are, potentially more conventionally attractive, we look at them and we're like, oh, their love is so pure and good and all of the conflicts that they deal with are totally fine. And then we look at someone like Danielle and Mohammed, one of the more iconic couples, and perhaps they're not the most conventionally attractive couple, but so you kind of question, what are his intentions? So I kind of wanted to get your take on the idea of this tangible idea of winning, and how we root for love, how we as a society sort of consume different types of love shows. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about also on the contrast of sort of like The Bachelor and the idea of like winning for love versus how we perceive shows like 90 Day Fiance or Naked and Afraid, or ones that are more just like about the love and less about the like winning the one competition, less of a competition element, more of a like sociocultural exploration into the relationship.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting, right? Like you said, that we kind of assume that love is and should be the final goal, right? That's the viewers just assume, the people who go on the shows just assume, like, obviously, if you're going to be in a committed relationship, it needs to involve love. And that's something to kind of strive for. And typically it's like heterosexual, monogamous love, right? Between two people who, like you said, are oftentimes very similar in terms of their conventional attractiveness, in terms of their demographic characteristics. They tend to be from the same race. They tend to be from the same class category, right? We kind of hold that up as like the gold standard, something that we should be striving for. And as you say, right, it's interesting because it's not like you're getting like $1 million prize or a trip to Maui at the end. You're just, although they get
some money, but I mean, I think from what I've heard and seen, because I love 90, I've done a lot of research into 90 Day Fiance. I watch all the spinoffs. I watch like Pillow Talk, which is crazy. I mean, like that's another thing that we can think about too, is like, why am I'm watching a show that's literally other people from that universe reacting to the show that I just watched. And I still find that fascinating. But yeah, no, I mean, I think they do get a little bit of money from what I've seen, or at least what they portray on the TV show. And of course it is a TV show, it's produced, but like a lot of them do seem to still struggle financially, even if they're on the show. So it doesn't seem like whatever fame or money that it gives you is not exactly as lucrative as some other shows. And maybe that's because like there's so many of them, or because, you're not winning something necessarily. So the people just have to be invested in you like as a person, which is always sort of a crapshoot. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there.
There is, yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting because there's kind of two things happening, right? There's like within the fiction of the show, they're all in it for love, right? Because they have to be, because if they're not, then they're not there for the right reasons, right? Then they have to exit.
And you can't say that, even though there's some that we probably
you have to always be, whether or not you're really, and if you admit that you don't love the person, then you're gone, right? So within the fiction of the show, that's the ultimate prize. But in reality, right, the ultimate prize also for some of these people at this point is endorsements, SponCon, right? They already have these social media personalities coming into the show. They want to be able to use the show as a platform. So, which is the ultimate goal here. I mean, there's clearly other things happening as well, other than just they want to find the love of their life.
And I think that probably evolved because the show itself has been on for, oh my God, it's like on its 10th year or something now. So, I mean, this kind of leads us to a slightly different topic, but like the role of social media and influence and fame within the rise of reality TV, because it used to sort of be like pretty much everyone going on the shows were unknown. And then maybe someone would rise to fame, whether they won the show or they were, the guy who won, didn't win American Idol, William Hwang, he became William Hung. He became famous for like a older, like viral moment that happened before TikTok and all that. But now you're right, these people are coming on to shows with already established social media platforms and hoping to just sort of, enhance those. And I think a lot of people, they say they want love, they say they want the money, but everyone knows they're going to get some level of exposure with being on the reality shows. Like, do you think that there was a certain point in maybe, I don't know, the past 20 years where that really changed and heightened? Like, is there a specific moment or cultural touchstone that you think really showed the shift in this? Or do you think it's something that just sort of gradually happened and now we kind of accept it just as social media is so much a regular part of our everyday lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Kardashians played a big role. I think they were really the first to show, right? Well, as they did, in reality TV in general. But I think they were really the first to kind of show, I guess the producers, people who created reality TV knew how lucrative it was, right? Like the people who created Survivor, like that show paid for itself in advertisement before it even aired, right? But for the people on it, this idea of kind of using the show to self-brand, the famous for being famous thing, I think that really, the Kardashians really like took that ball and ran with it, which is interesting because, people often are very critical of the Kardashians, right? They're famous for being famous. What have they really done to earn their fame? Well, first of all, there have always been people who are famous for being famous, right? Royalty are famous for being part of a family. So that's nothing new with the Kardashians, but whether you love them or hate them, they were really able to sort of take this platform and to brand themselves in ways that were really appealing and extremely lucrative. So at a certain point, you have to believe they did something to help.
I mean, Kris Jenner, I think, is one of the smartest women alive. Yeah. I mean, I personally, like, I don't really watch the Kardashians. I never got into it. I say that, and I'm sure as soon as I potentially turned it on and started watching, I'd be sucked in. It's almost like, I don't want to go down that road. I'm already committed to the 90 Day Fiance universe. I can't enter another one right now, but naturally, I'm on social media. They pop up on everything. I've bought Kylie Jenner's lip kits. Like I've seen, they have such a larger impact that I think is what surpasses the other shows in terms, I love 90 Day Fiance, but I don't think that most people who don't watch the show are like familiar with the people, or I love that experiment that you do at the beginning of the book where you have everyone, and you do this in your classes where you have all your students, in one column, they list all of the Supreme Court justices. The other one, they list all of the Kardashians they can name. I know that I can maybe list like one or two Supreme Court justices, and Kardashians at least like 7. So I think it really, it does show like what is quote unquote, important and on the minds of the cultural zeitgeist. With the Kardashians, though, it's just like, it's almost like I lose touch of like where they as people start and like where the Kardashians as a brand like ends. It's sort of just like, it's fascinating. And I'm almost like, do they even know who they are as people anymore? Because they started in the spotlight so young and their entire identity has sort of like been being on a reality TV show, and everything that they do is in that lens. And that's probably like a really hard way to live, because I don't think for a lot of other people or families, I mean, of course, we've had like the Osbournes, and we've had, we've had the Anna Nicole show, we've had shows that explore celebrities in their lives, but for this long, I think, and even when the show wasn't on, they're clearly such a part of our zeitgeist now. Like, do you think that that will ever happen again? Or do you think that the Kardashians are just sort of like the royal family of reality TV and have created something that can't be replicated?
Will that be replicated? I don't know. That's a good question because reality TV is so much more kind of diffuse now.
Right.
At the time there was less, when they first aired, there was less reality. There was a lot of reality TV still, but there was a less reality TV to watch now. And also now with streaming, right? We tend to like watch things really quickly.
Well, they're on Hulu now, right? I'm pretty sure now they used to be like on
they're on Hulu now.
Yeah. So now they're literally on streaming.
So it's like you could be invested in Love is Blind for like a weekend and then you're done with it.
I want to talk about Love is Blind too after. Love is Blind.
Yeah, but I mean, like, right, so you watch it. I mean, I watched the first season of Love is Blind, and I write about reality TV, and I can't remember most of the people who were on that season.
Because it goes by, and that's the problem with binge watching TV too. It's like, that's why I do love, as much as I'm like, I want the next one, I want the instant gratification. You get that time to sit in the week to really absorb what you just saw. You get time, especially when it's like real people, to like, what are they doing on social media? What's happening in between? But when it happens, when you're watching 10 hours at once, it's like, it all blurs together.
Yeah. I mean, there are TikTok celebrities, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Like, but in terms of like conventional reality TV celebrities, that's a really good point. I don't know if anyone's really been able to rise to the level of the Kardashians.
And to like keep that brand going too, because I think, they started as reality TV stars. Now they're business women, they're models, they're, they have families. I mean, it's really just crazy how they've evolved. Like, I can't think of any other, and they've all had their scandals and their whatnots. But I think that's what's great too, is like, despite all their scandals and bad things that have happened with them, they're still like, people like them still, and or they love to hate them, but either way they're still relevant, and they're not like canceled in the sense that like we're just sweeping them under the rug, which I find very fascinating. Is like, we're very quick to forgive, or quick to still at least like accept, because they're the Kardashians, we allow them to get away with things that even other celebrities we wouldn't allow to get away with.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think people certainly find them compelling. Right? Love them or hate them, they find them compelling. And just when you think they're slipping away, right? Oh, their shows,
they're back on now they're on streaming,
right?
yeah.
And people are watching, and it's being covered in major news outlets. Yeah. And again, you have to believe that they're doing something, or at least Kris Jenner is doing something out there, right?
Right. And I think that, I mean, I was barely alive for the OJ Simpson trial, but I'm also fascinated by true crime. And that's like even a whole other episode that we could talk about, is sort of like the blending of true crime and reality TV, and sort of like court TV, and how that is that, reality TV and true crime sort of have a lot in common. But with the OJ Simpson trial, I think, even the Kim Kardashian, that's sort of like, they were around then, and Kris Jenner knew even at the OJ Simpson trial, she was sort of like making a name for herself then. And with David Kardashian, they were putting themselves on the forefront then. So it literally like goes back, I think that was almost, at least that's the first time I can remember them really being like in the pop culture zeitgeist, but they were just like, that put them on the radar. And then I think from there, when did the Kardashians officially premiere? Was it like early 2000s?
I think it was 2008, I believe.
Okay. So you're right. That's an interesting point too, because there were a decent amount of reality TV shows out, but I don't think there was really much that was just like, let's follow these rich and famous people and see what happens, and keep following them too. I think that was, they didn't know how lucrative it would be, but here we are 14 years later now, and we still are following the Kardashians. So speaking of Love is Blind, I don't know if you've also watched The Ultimatum, which is the newer Netflix show.
No, I haven't had a chance yet, but I have heard about it. Yeah.
How do you feel about these shows? They're calling these shows social experiments. They're not even referring to them as reality TV, which I think is kind of just a rebranding tool. But do you think that these are more effective, less effective? Do you think they sort of just represent the evolution of reality TV and the nature of like the instant gratification, wanting to consume everything at once? Do you think that we just talked about a little bit, but like, do you think that takes away in terms of the viewer and their connection with the show? Or do you think it's more of just like a branding strategy? And do you think that is going to be something that we're going to see more of in the future?
I think there's a lot of questions. Okay.
Sorry, I know.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of being a social experiment, I mean, they call the original Real World a social experiment too. So reality TV has always been, and they call Big Brother a social experiment. I think that's something that's kind of a narrative that's always been there.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good. I feel like it's been a while since they've called a show that, but you're right, they used to, and now they're just bringing it back. Yeah. But they're bringing it back.
They're bringing it back. There were a lot of shows in like the early 2000s. Yeah, but they're bringing it back. I mean, yeah. Do I think that that's going to result in more viewers, or do I feel like this is like the natural evolution of reality TV? Yeah,
sort of like, do you think that calling it a social experiment and in a way, framing it with this sort of unique premise as like, okay, it is a little bit crazy to be like, okay, you're going to meet someone behind this door blind. And then the ultimatum is, you're going to come into this experiment with someone who you're supposed to marry and live with someone else for 3 weeks. I mean, they are ridiculous premises, but I think what Netflix is trying to do, at least from my perspective, is like take these crazy over the top premises. Like, it's insane to fall in love with someone from never seeing them and then actually get engaged and married, but making them more like, okay, this is realistic and this could actually happen to you, and taking these insane premises and sort of like paring them down to make them approachable for the everyday person. So you could see yourself and being like, maybe I could fall in love with someone like that, when it is ultimately like ridiculous premise. Like, do you think that that's sort of like the direction that these shows are going to go in terms of taking these larger than life ridiculous premises and paring them down? Whereas something like, I mean, it's different because it's not so much like a love competition, but like Wipeout is ridiculous and they're never going to pare that down. I mean, that's like a crazy larger than life action, obstacle course, and they're never going to try to make that like something. I hope not that they're like, okay, now you have to go complete this logic puzzle on this. It is what it is. And so I think that the reshaping of these shows is interesting to me in terms of like how they're trying to almost make them like more prestigious in a way, or like separating them from the quote unquote like stigmas of dumb reality TV. That's kind of what I took away from their branding of it.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's two things happening. It's like how are reality shows changing, right? And also how are they changing and how they're branded,
Right.
right?
And
I
how
mean,
we
I
consume
think,
them too.
yeah, we tend to like to see things in like a linear way, like, oh, reality TV is getting more and more outrageous because it has to get more outrageous because we've grown anesthetized to it, we're bored of it. But I don't know if that's to some extent, yes, that's true, right? We have people dating in underground bunkers and like giving ultimatums, but like living with other people and wearing prosthetic noses on dates. And yes,
Oh yeah,
but I
that show
mean,
was that the show where they had to dress up as like, oh no, there was the one where they had to dress up as like characters or something that crazy.
right. Yeah.
Like that was ridiculous. I didn't watch that one.
Right. But I mean, there's always been ridiculous
Right.
reality TV, right? Like going back to like Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire? What? The
Right, right, right.
Spawn, which was like women got plastic surgery,
I mean,
right? There
Rock
was
of
like
Love.
yeah.
I love Rock of Love. Like that is one of my favorite shows. And I think, but it embraced it. That's what I mean. It's almost like these shows are always crazy, but we cut out like it's so things. I mean, maybe it's because we have the awareness that things are more produced naturally, and we know sort of a little bit more as the consumer, like what's going on behind the scenes. But it just feels like the ridiculous aspect of reality shows where you had that crazy character or you had that crazy moment is so much more like produced or feels like a little more unnatural on these shows. Like they have crazy moments, they have that big reveal, but it like doesn't feel like as wild or like raunchy as those 2000s reality shows. Like those do just
Yeah.
feel like crazier to me in a way that these don't, even though the premise might quote unquote be a little crazier.
Well, I mean, people definitely have a self-awareness, right?
Right.
Going into the shows
That's like,
now.
yeah,
I
that's, I
mean,
think
yeah,
that's what it is too. Is like
right.
people, yeah, they, in 2007, even like you knew it was being recorded, you had this awareness. Reality TV had been out for about 10 years, but you didn't know that as soon as it was on, everyone's going to be talking about it on Twitter and TikTok. And like, you can't, nothing is private anymore. And like, really nothing is private. But yeah, that self awareness is really interesting because people going on to reality shows now have that history and knowledge of having watched it. I'm assuming some reality TV. Yeah, no, it's very interesting to think about. But rock, so yeah, I love Rock of Love. I love that whole era of messy reality TV. Like, how do you think that? Do you think there's a specific moment where they sort of shifted away from that? Because I feel like, I mean, I don't know if you've seen, I'm sure you've seen episodes of like Flavor of Love and Rock of Love, where it's
Right.
really just like balls to the wall, crazy. And I know that that sort of fits the MTV VH1 brand, whereas, you know, something like Netflix is obviously trying to be a little bit more prestigious. But do you think that there was a specific moment that it shifted? I mean, I know the Kardashians did kind of come in around that time and shake things up, but even like those networks, you know, MTV, I remember when I was young, used to play a ton of like teen centric reality shows like Date My Mom and Next. And I think I just
Yeah.
remember a certain period where all of a sudden they stopped making those shows and it became more of like because I'm assuming that those were like, you know, lower budget, not as intensely produced as well. So I'm wondering if there was a shift where people almost view those as like too stupid and wanted to be making something more prestigious. Cause I miss that sort of like lack of self-awareness, I think is what I'm trying to get at. Like I really enjoyed that raunchy lack of self-awareness. And I think sometimes we have too much self-awareness and that makes me feel like I'm watching a reality show in a way that I don't want to be aware of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. I don't think we can ever go back, right? I
Right. That's what
mean,
I'm like.
yeah,
Can we, you know,
yeah.
that's what I think I'm trying to get. I'm just like spewing random thoughts and I'm like, you know, can we do so you don't think we can ever really get back to that? Like you think that
Well,
that's a special time that we can't get back to?
I mean, as I say in the book, one of the things that I really enjoy about reality shows is looking for really real moments
Mm-hmm.
and like moments that, people aren't really putting on a persona or, aren't overly produced. And oftentimes it's like, I have a lot of thoughts about kids on reality TV from like an ethical
Oh
standpoint,
man.
right? But like it's hard. I mean, kids are just going to be kids,
Right.
right? So oftentimes when there are kids on there, like you get reality, or when people just flip out when there's just a moment, right, where you can tell that's their real emotion coming out, or when they start looking at the cameras, like, okay, this is wait a
And
minute,
that's what's interesting too, is because like we're supposed to know as an audience that the cameras are there, but they're acting like the cameras aren't there. But of course, like if something crazy happens, like at some point you have to break the illusion that yes, this is a TV show, but this is also real life. You know, there's the producers jump in for crazy fights and stuff. And yeah, those
right?
moments of reality when you can see the person like breaking the fourth wall of like, okay, I'm on the TV show, but also my life is like more important right now, or this moment. You're right. Kids too are crazy. That yeah. Well,
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's still some really real moments on reality TV. But I agree, you know, a lot of people are going on the shows now, right? Because they already have a social media presence. They want to be influencers, right? They want to get something out of the show. Even if they don't, right? They've been watching reality TV now for what, like 25 years.
Right.
So, you know, they have some sense of what it entails and what they want to get out of it. You know, people even going in with like, I know what I want my character arc to be, and then fulfilling that character arc. So yeah, it's interesting going back and like watching episodes of the original Real World or Survivor, because it almost seems like very like documentary, like in nature.
Yeah.
And at the time we thought Survivor was just wacky and zany, but it just seems like it's almost like a documentary at this point, right? And the people who just like weren't even playing the game, really, not the social game, because they had no idea what they were doing, what they were getting themselves into. And I don't think we can ever go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, unless you have someone who's literally like been in a coma for 20 years or something, because even if you quote unquote haven't watched reality TV or whatever, you're still part of society that interacts with social media. You're going to know who the Kardashians are. You're going to know who these people are, who these shows are to some extent. So yeah, it's kind of hard to go in without that preconceived notions. And in terms of the evolution of reality shows, I also wanted to talk a little bit about like shows like Nathan For You or the Eric Andre show that take this idea of quote unquote reality, but also clearly have this like scripted character and host. And I find those fascinating because I'm like, you know, we're looking for the real life moments. And especially Nathan For You, I find one of the funniest TV shows because the way that they blend these real life people and these real life moments with pre-planned scripted elements in a more overt way than like clearly the producer saying, okay, now you have to go cause a conflict with this. Like, do you find these shows more satisfying? Do you view them still as reality TV? Do you think that their sort of blending of scripted and reality TV allows them to be almost like a different subgenre? What are your thoughts on those sort of like wacky, you know, sort of reality TV shows, but with the scripted element?
Right. I mean, again, I don't think that's necessarily new for there to be a kind of scripted element of a reality TV, right? And maybe it's blended together in kind of a new way. I don't know. It's interesting. My husband really likes Nathan For You, and he was like, "You'll really like this." And he had me watch. He doesn't watch reality TV, so it's interesting. Like, I don't know if he necessarily even considers that to be reality TV. I don't know. And to me, it didn't feel new. It didn't feel different. It kind of felt like a retread. But you're right. Like, I guess I can't think of any other type of show that's specifically like that.
I view it as unique because like he is playing a character in himself. Like, you know, he goes in with this idea and this scripted notion, but he's taking the, like some of the moments that he has with these people. Like there's this one older man who owns a gas station and he's talking about how he stays so young by drinking his grandson's urine. And it's just like a real moment. And this is a real guy. And you can tell it's not prompted or scripted. And like Nathan is trying to just be like, yeah.
Because I think that's one of the things that like annoyed me about it is like I couldn't tell.
That's what I love.
That's what you like about it. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Because there were moments the whole thing seemed scripted to me.
That's what, and from what I have friends who've like been interns on the show and worked on it. And so I know that they go in and like certain people are actors, but the majority of these real life people that they are dealing with are just like real, really weird people. And these moments that happen, like from what I've heard, like he is a slightly awkward guy, but really plays up this sort of like awkward, almost like, you know, for like, he doesn't even exist in the universe, sort of like this weird audience stand-in, but he just plays that up with these moments that happen with these other people. Like he really doesn't, like some of these moments he doesn't know how to act. Like he truly is like dumbfounded by these people. And it is a weird combination of like, okay, but if he's playing this character, how much of that is the character? How much of that is him? And then you wonder about these people too, because they know that they're on a reality TV show, but I don't think they really understand like what kind of reality TV show it is. Like, I think they just go on it knowing that like, okay, their business is going to be potentially turned around, but they don't know that they're on like a Comedy Central show. So the way that,
I mean, I've seen like Candid Camera, right?
No, yeah, you're right.
Did that, right? What's the other one? What Would You Do?
I think maybe
right?
because this is framed to sort of be more of like a highbrow, almost, it is supposed to be like a comedy show, but the fact that it's, I guess there's more of like a storyline to it too, is like, even though these are real people and it's unscripted, something about Candid Camera or the, you know, Watch What Happened, you know, or What Would You Do? Like those things, the lack of the relationships that he builds with these people too. And even in like a 10 or 15 minute segment, the humanity, I think, and the personability is what's there for me. And the way you get to know these really, really random strange people is different than in those, Watch What Happens Live, where it's more of just like a sociological behaviors, but less about like who is that person and who is their background and what led them to have this reaction. Like that's what I find interesting.
Maybe I'll have to give
I would give it another try if you want. There's a couple of episodes that are like really, really good, that because I mean not all of them too. Like I appreciate the show so much as a whole and like love it, but I do understand that like it's not for everyone, especially if you're trying to figure out like, is he playing, like what is he trying to do? So I'll give you a couple of episodes that I think would start you off on your
I'll just let it wash over me. I won't think too deep.
That's what's hard too, is I think I went into it before I really I've always been fascinated by reality TV, but especially like the past 5 or 6 years, like I've really been interested in looking at it from the more sociological academic perspective. And so I think I watched it like just sort of before I really started looking at it. So I was able to appreciate it. Like there's one episode where he starts this company called The Movement, where he has these people who will come and move your house, like help you move your house, but it's actually just the people who are the movers. He bills it to them as an exercise program. So they think they're just there helping, to do some exercise. And the people who are getting the moving service think they have professional movers. And he's like, look, this is a viable business plan. But then I think what's fascinating to me in the element of reality TV is he plays with our actual reality. So in this instance, he takes a character actor and he pretends that he's like someone who lost all this weight from this movement program. And he has them actually go on morning shows in reality and pretends that he wrote this book. So he's like playing with actual reality as part of the TV show as well, which adds another layer to me that I don't fully know what that means or how to unpack that. But I feel like that is missing from a lot of other reality TV shows as well, like the self-reflection in the show, without it being like, look at what we're doing, like, haha.
Right. Yeah.
It's telling me that I only have 6 minutes left in this recording, apparently. So maybe we need to speed things up. I didn't know that Zoom had limits, but apparently we do. So as we have 6 more minutes, I'm wondering too, how do you think that scripted TV has evolved or has not evolved as a response to reality TV? And do you think that the golden age of television also applies to reality TV? Do you think we're in a golden age of reality TV? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, again, we tend to think about things in this like linear way, like, oh, right. Okay, now we're in the peak, and I don't necessarily think a lot of things work like that in reality. I mean, I think maybe there have been several. It depends what you mean by golden age of reality TV, also, right? Like in the early 2000s, when there was like so much reality TV, right, of the kind of Fox, like.
Well, I would say maybe that prestige reality TV, and I would almost consider Nathan For You as part of that as well. But yeah, prestige, because as much as I love Rock of Love and Flavor of Love and all those, I mean, in my heart, they're prestige reality TV. I don't know if objectively, maybe they're not like prestige reality TV.
Yeah, but I mean, you also had that with like The Hills and Laguna Beach, right?
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah,
prestige, where they're being filmed like you're almost like you're watching a movie,
right?
Right. So, I mean, that's happened before. I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes I wonder if reality TV is on its way out, because now we have, it's been transferred to like the TikTokers and the YouTubers, right? The social media accounts are like cutting out the middleman, and people are just producing their own reality TV.
Right. Like, do we even need actual produced 45-minute, hour-long reality TV?
It's still there, right? I mean, it's still almost half of all TV. It's still being produced, right? It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime soon. But I mean, I guess I just don't know the answer. It's interesting. Like, will reality TV become more highbrow? I also think reality TV isn't any one thing, right? So it's hard to make generalizations. Yes, there maybe, right, there will be these like prestige, right? There's the show where it's like a period piece almost, right? That just came out. It's almost like Bridgerton, where they're like recording. Oh, it's been upgraded.
Oh, yeah. I just upgraded. So now we can talk for like 15 more minutes now, because I'm like, I don't want to cut us off. So I just upgraded us.
Okay, great. And, so like, I think that maybe it'll become like more highbrow, but you're always going to have the like people dating and prosthetic noses, right?
Well, and that's what I find interesting too, is because I think like with Netflix, it's almost like they've tried to make it prestigious with Love is Blind, with The Ultimate. And they're like, okay, this is a social experiment. It's not just a reality TV. It's like, we're really changing the world. But I'm like, no, you're not. Like, this is just a reality TV. And I think the fact that they try to bring in other elements too, like, they have Vanessa and Nick Lachey as like the hosts, and they think that's going to add a whole element. And they have these like, now I think they even sell like the Love is Blind, like the gold cups and stuff. So they're really trying to like make it bigger than it is. And I'm like, almost like leaning into its roots would almost make it better a little bit for me. I'm like, no, it's not a prestigious show. It is a show just about people falling in love. And the more that you sort of embrace that cheesiness, I feel like would be like a little more fun for me, but I don't think that that's what Netflix wants to do. But
I mean, I think The Bachelor does that to some extent too, right? Where
and that's interesting because I don't like, I've never got into The Bachelor. And I think maybe part of that has to do with like the competition aspect of it for me, where it's like, it wasn't as fun to just like, because I knew that people were like, not as much invested in the love aspect of it, which for some people is more interesting. And for me, it made it feel like a little more fake and harder to connect. I don't know, the few times I've watched it, I never really connected with it, but I know that everyone else loves it. Have you seen the show or heard of Burning Love?
Burning Love? No.
Oh my gosh, it's going to change. This is not enough people know about it. So it's a Bachelor reality parody show that was like done by like, was it like Michael Ian Black, Ken Marino,
okay, so it's like
it's a scripted reality parody, but it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So there's 3 seasons, and they're making like just like each season is like a Bachelor season, and they pick people off. And one is the first season is like a male competitor, the second one is a female competitor. But the way that they skew, because it's scripted, it's a comedy show, but the way that they pick apart the reality shows and make fun of everything, and this was like before. Sort of like, I think it was like 2009 or 2010. And so I'm wondering, like, why don't we have more of those types of, there's always been parodies and stuff like that. But I think, this show is, you haven't heard of it. It's very under the radar, even though it stars a lot of famous people. And I'm wondering if that's because people, oh, Burning Love, it's a parody of The Bachelor. Like, that's going to be stupid because The Bachelor is stupid. Like, I'm wondering if reality TV is going to lead to sort of more like than scripted parodies. Have you seen Unreal on Hulu?
Yeah.
So I'm like, are we going to get more stuff like that? Like that's the only other one that really comes to mind that sort of takes a peek behind the curtain of reality TV in like a scripted way and not just like a documentary about reality TV. I'm wondering if maybe we'll get more of that behind the scenes stuff. I don't know, but you got to check out Burning Love. It is hilarious. Cause that was Unreal, I think was cool. Cause it was, it was a drama, but the comedy, because there's so much comedy in it. And I feel like we don't embrace maybe I'm wrong, but the comedy and the funny aspect from a sociocultural perspective, like the humor behind it, if we get rid of all the negative, because I think that's part of the problem too, is a lot of the humor is entrenched with some of these negative things. Like the humor is at someone else's cost, or it's at a situation that like is uncomfortable, but it's funny for the people not involved in it. Like, do you think that the humor in these shows is evolving as well?
Do I think that the humor in the shows is evolving as well? Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly, again, there's a lot of self-awareness on the shows now, right? So if you look at a show like even like RuPaul's Drag Race, where RuPaul brings in, right, like tropes of reality TV into the show, right? Like they do reality parody challenges in the show. And yeah, RuPaul's really kind of got the finger on the cultural pulse. So does kind of bring those things into the show. And there's that kind of self-awareness about it being reality TV. So I think that's a good example of that. Yeah, I don't know why there haven't been more. There have been some others, like the Real House Husbands or whatever. But
yeah, and I think they also did like the people who did Burning Love, or like the similar group. They did a Real Housewives spoof as well, like a scripted comedy spoof, but it wasn't as funny. I would say Burning Love is really like the peak comedy.
I mean, I've seen a lot of like viral videos, where it's like Real Housewives of Boston or whatever, Right.
No, I mean, I think they're easy to make one-off fodder, but I think that's why Unreal was really successful as well, is to take this notion of something, flipping the script, and it was a little bit cheesy at times, but I thought it was really interesting to give a behind-the-scenes look that we don't get too much. You don't get to see the producer's side of things too much of the time, or you don't get to see when the cameras stop rolling in a quote unquote unfiltered way as much as I think that we could. I think that that's still like a slightly less explored way.
Yeah, I mean, I think just narratively, maybe it's difficult, right? Because where you go over multiple seasons, right? So it is something maybe that's more suited to those, short, even Unreal, which was a show that I loved. It had like 3 seasons.
Yeah, dragged on.
At the end, it was really like, the first season was fantastic, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And I mean, I watched all the seasons; it was a great show.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know in terms of like what you can get out of that narratively for a show to have kind of long legs just based on parody.
Yeah, no, maybe that's why it hasn't happened. And do you think that, stuff like TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that is just going to keep enhancing, going to keep trending upwards? Do you think it's going to die out at any point and like reach a bubble? Or do you think, we don't know what the next thing is, so it's kind of hard to say, like, who knows what's next?
Yeah, no, I have no idea. It's interesting to see like whether that also is gonna again supplant like traditional reality
Right.
TV. I mean, most people aren't watching things on televisions anymore. So I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I have to ask my students. They're more on top of things than I am. There's probably some random way to watch
Right,
TV that I
right.
don't even know yet.
Or yeah, I mean, because I mean, before, even when I was watching TV when I was younger, it's like now I have to avoid going on Twitter if something is live. I mean, also the idea of live versus streaming TV too. I mean, like having to deal with commercials or having to be, okay, I have to be home right at 8 because the show is on. And now it's like the fact that we have it available at any moment at any time is kind of daunting because there's so much that how do we know what to pick through instead of like, okay, I know every Sunday at 8 I have 90 Day Fiance, which I do. Um, so there's so much more that I could talk about and I could talk to you for hours, but I do want to keep it somewhat concise. So I want just a little bit more about you. What is your favorite guilty pleasure, quote unquote, reality show to watch, or not so guilty pleasure? Because that is sort of we don't need that concept anyways. Guilty pleasure
Right.
or
Well,
not
that's what I was
was
going to say, right? I wouldn't say that we have to say that reality TV is a guilty pleasure, right? Like nobody who watches football calls it a guilty
right.
pleasure.
Yeah. What is your favorite reality TV show?
My favorite, RuPaul's Drag Race probably would be my favorite reality TV show. I think just, as a sociologist who studies gender, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
But even just as a person, I find that show, and that show's been on for a long time.
Yeah, they've been so successful. Talk about evolving and staying with the times. I mean, I am not a religious watcher, but I mean, it is, and he is just fed, like, talk about insane businessman. Like, he knows what he is. He's got his finger on the pulse. If you had to compete in a reality show, which one would it be?
Oh gosh, I would never, never want to do that.
With all your self-awareness and everything.
Yeah,
when I
was in grad school, I had this recurring nightmare that I was in a reality show called America's Next Top Grad Student. And I always get kicked off first.
It's like if you don't write your paper well enough, you're gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm necessarily good at I'm not good at cooking or anything like that, right? I would love to go on. I watched Nailed It with my daughter.
Oh my God, I love Nailed It.
And if there were like a mother and daughter, parent and child, or, adult and child episode of Nailed It, I would love to go on that with her just because she would love it and we would have so much fun.
Oh my God,
we're both terrible at cooking.
And that's one of those great shows where it's like, you don't have to be good at it. And even the more you mess up, the better you are.
Yeah.
Even it's like,
but there's such a sense of like just ebullience and joy about it, right?
Nicole, she's the positive energy too, because it's like even though you're competing, and maybe it's because it's like a quote unquote lower stakes, what is it, like $10,000, which of course is like a great amount of money, but like it's not life changing. And so
you're being laughed at, but you're
the camaraderie too. And like, there's no real competition. I don't know. This is totally random, but whenever anyone gets that like 3-minute like pause button or whatever, I'm always like, why don't you guys do it for the last 3 minutes? That's what I would do if I ever got
on. And then, or once they have to get the stuff out of the oven, then do it. And their stuff's
like the competition. I'm like, sometimes I'm like that's what I love about the show, but the competitive element, I'm like, you guys almost have to play it up a little more because
they help each other out. They get each other stuff in the pantry. Like they're not.
I know I'm always like, I just want someone to pause for the last 3 minutes. I mean, I'm not a baker. I'm so bad. I mean, I'd love to go on the show just because I am bad, but I'm like, I just want to go on just to do that and have everyone be like, oh, well, my cake, I got 3 minutes, can't do anything. Are there any like random off the radar shows that you researched that didn't make it into the book that are like must see little gems, or things that you've encountered that you want to watch that you feel like are unique and interesting?
Oh, a lot of things made it into the book. So I'm trying to think if there's
anything that did. I know there was a lot of, I recognize most of them, but there was some that I was like,
lately, Is It Cake? Everyone's obsessed with Is It Cake?
Oh yeah, I haven't watched that one, but
that came out after the book came out. But literally just, is this item cake or not cake? And yet it's a whole show.
I mean, The Floor is Lava, which is like a game you used to play as a child.
Yeah, my daughter loves that one too.
But that was
she's waiting for the next season. She's really annoyed that it's not out yet. I'm like, okay.
I mean, yeah, it's like literally it's just people trying to compete in this obstacle course. And most of the people on that show were like not even that interesting, but I still was fascinated by it. And I'm not even going to call it a guilty pleasure because I watched it and I gave it the same amount of attention.
American Ninja Warrior, right?
Yeah. And if you had to create your own reality show, not necessarily one that you would participate in, but maybe as a producer, do you have any ideas or any concepts that you would want to create and nothing is too crazy?
This isn't that crazy, but I always say like there should be a reality show. So like my mother-in-law lives in like a retirement community, And the stories that she tells me,
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
because it's like
Yes.
older people, but it's also like they're acting like they're all living with each other. They're acting like they're
Right, like that high school demographic. Oh my God, I love
yeah, that
that.
mentality, and like they're all like, you know, gossiping behind each other's backs, and they're all these like, you
Because
know,
they're all in the same. It's
crazy
when you have that
dynamic.
microcosm together, and they're all. It's like, did you see what Sam was wearing at dinner tonight? It's
Right.
like,
And older
yeah,
people watch TV. I mean, you'd think that
right.
would be a demographic. I mean, people, I guess, want that younger demographic, but I would
Oh,
watch.
that's a really good idea. I love that. And even just like thinking about scripted television show about elderly people, or like, a comedy that takes place in a retirement home. Like
I mean,
there's really
the Golden Girls, right? Like,
right.
why
Like
can't we
people
have
love,
that
yeah, that
again?
was, we need that. Well, it's because we got 10-year-olds on TikTok there. And we have so many, again, there's so much we could talk about. And like, we didn't even get into talking about WWE, which is like also my latest obsession, and talking about blending reality and fiction. But I wish, I wish we had 3 more hours, but I know you have
There's so
stuff to do,
much.
and there's so much to do. But thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat. And I'm sorry for throwing like 7 questions to you at once, but thank you for digesting it as best as possible. I know sometimes I just get excited and I want to pick your brain.
I get
But
excited about reality TV, so I
any
get it.
parting thoughts, any words of wisdom, any big takeaways from your book, if for those who haven't read it, some final words?
Yeah, I mean, I think reality TV shows us in some ways the worst of ourselves, right? Like
Mhm.
it shows us our sexism, our classism, our racism, our heteronormativity,
Or
right? You
ageism.
know, our ageism. It shows us our materialism, right? And I think people pay attention to that a lot, as they should. But at the same time, I think it shows us some like really beautiful things about ourselves, like how we evolve. It shows us our diversity. It shows us just how insanely creative we are as human beings. And so I believe in the potential of reality TV, and I wouldn't be such a fan of reality TV if I didn't. So I think that is one major takeaway.
Awesome. Well, for those who have not read your book yet, if you have even heard of a Kardashian, then I think you'll find something to appreciate and check out in this book. We will make sure that we link it below. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And until next time, everyone, stay reading.
Thanks so much.